The business of law is changing. Is your malpractice and business insurance keeping up? In today's presentation, we're going to discuss the most common fatal mistakes found in lawyers' professional insurance. To discuss this matter, I would like to welcome Michael Carroll.
Thank you for having me, and thanks everyone for attending today. We've termed today's presentation as the most common fatal mistakes found in lawyers' professional insurance. And I guess the biggest summary, if you will, that I see in 31 years, in a 31-year career, and it's seeped in, let's say, over the last decade, is that if you watch any amount of television, whether you're a huge sports fan like I am, or anything that you watch on television, or even on the internet, every other ad is either Geico or Progressive. And I use that for plain old auto insurance, personal auto insurance. They've made that into a commodity. And in my generalist peer group, you know, those with a property and casualty insurance license, shame on them, if you will, or us, if I even include myself in that group, because there was a very apathetic performance, whether it be a direct writing agent with a State Farm or an Allstate to an independent broker like myself, that the vast majority of my peer group has been apathetic, and hence companies like Progressive and Geico, which are glorified marketing machines, have come in and made it a commodity. As it pertains to today's presentation, to look at your professional insurance, and we'll get into the whole, what it encompasses, starting with your professional liability, to look at it in that respect, because that mentality seeps into every insurance thought pattern in every single industry, including the lawyer's profession, that it can be deadly. It can put you out of business. I've just seen it. It's the way it is. So with that being said, I'll share who I am. I was born in Bangor, Maine. My father was a fighter pilot. I'm grateful that he's still alive and well at 83. Met my mother over in Sicily. So I'm a combination of Irish and Italian. Mom is still alive and well. In fact, my folks are in Atlantic City right now, enjoying a little time away, traveling independently. So my father, again, I was born on an Air Force base up in Bangor, Maine. Been married for 29 years. I've got 4 kids. I think it's incredibly, and I touched on that, a generalist. General Joe or General Jane is not who you want protecting your law firm. Can General Joe and General Jane do a good job for you on your auto insurance, your home insurance, maybe even your office business insurance? Maybe, hopefully, you know, that's up for debate. But for professional liability, not even close. 17 consecutive years in a row have been selected as best practices. Of course, you wouldn't know what that is. Why would you? Very simply put, that is the ranking system by the Independent Insurance Agents Association, where my firm has earned top 200 ranking in the country. It's how I built my business, and that who's the beneficiary of that? You are. Who's the reason for that? You are. With on the back end, that we specialize in law firms and law firms only. And we have offices nationally in Maumee, Ohio, which is a suburb of the bustling metropolis known as Toledo, Ohio, and in Phoenix, Arizona. I wrote a book. If you know, as the cliche goes, people say, well, how much do you really know about this? I can literally say I wrote the book on it. I can say I literally wrote the book on it, excuse me. But The Naked Lawyer, that's exactly what the cover and the back looks like. This is not an ebook. It's a hard copy book. If you would like a copy mailed to you, I'll send it to you via the mail. I will do it for free. You'll get it in the mail within a week. You can either email me, michael@insuringlawyer.com, or you can call the office and speak to whomever answers and just share, hey, I'd like a copy mailed to, give them your best mailing address, and that's that. Or last but not least, if you'd like to go online, it's www.insuringlawyer.com/book. So you'll find it. It's written. Underwriters find my book to be, you know, very plain and very stupid, and I can't believe that. Well, underwriters are the enemy of you and of me. See, I work for you. I don't work for the insurance company. I work for you. This book is written that you'll like it, you'll understand it, and it'll resonate with you. And that's who I wrote it to. I didn't write it to impress one of my peers, and certainly not an underwriter. So feel free to get a free copy. It's there for you. Okay, the most common, we'll break this down into different segments, but the most common fatal mistakes found in lawyers' professional insurance, we'll start with data breach, cyber liability, ransomware, which is a new one, which it's a part of your office business insurance, okay? And we'll start right here. Data breach and cyber liability and ransomware are a newer and a high risk for law offices. What that comes down to is within the last 3 or 4 years, if your current agent or broker has not endorsed on your office business insurance, at the very least, data breach and cyber liability, and within the last year, ransomware, you're working with someone who's just hanging out and taking your money. They aren't protecting you properly. They aren't doing it. What exactly is at risk for you? Well, if you don't have this protection and there is a breach, for example, you know, a laptop gets stolen or lost, a tablet gets stolen or lost, your smartphone gets stolen or lost, yet alone your computer system gets hacked. And if you don't think it can happen to you, you know, unless you've been living under a rock, I mean, the Democratic National Party was hacked, Target was hacked, the IRS was hacked, Sony was hacked by North Korea. I mean, all these different things. These hackers can hack your office or my office for fun while they're eating a salad on a patio somewhere in the world. So if there is a potential breach, or there has been a breach, excuse me, you need to notify all your current and past clients, or else if you're in every state but one in the country, and I believe it's either Vermont, New Hampshire, or Idaho, I can find out for sure, every state will impose a $250,000 fine if you don't notify them. The insurance company will take care of all of that. So that's important there. Cyber liability and data breach protects from any type of occurrence where clients or employees' info becomes compromised. Here we go. It covers the cost to mail all of your clients, notifying your clients of a potential data breach, again, from hacked computers, or it could be a disgruntled employee, you know, taking your information. You terminate them, they quit, maybe they're whatever. Whatever the, again, a lost smartphone, anything like that, any way that your client's information can be compromised falls under this protection. Ransomware coverage that's brand new within the last year. You'll have hackers out there that hold your computer hostage, and they try to bribe you to allow you to get your computer back, and they're very difficult to detect. If you have this protection, the insurance company goes in there, they get your set. One of two things will happen. One, they will, and both are to your benefit. One, they'll try to figure out who this is. Some hackers are obviously buffoons and can be caught. The real professional hackers are very difficult to figure out who they are and detect them and catch them. But the biggest thing is they will send a team in immediately to get your server freed up, to restore all the different things it takes to get you back up and running, so you're shut down for the minimum amount of time. Imagine if, at least in my office and many law firms, you have a central server, if you will, even if you're working on a cloud system, they can get into that. If everyone's information if your computer system is shut down and your office cannot communicate and find stored files and what have you, you're at a standstill. So this is where the insurance company comes in. Then I put, how much do you have to protect when it comes to your office business insurance and your contents? We'll move on to that. First party protection. This is another thing. If your information is compromised, your client's information, if someone hacks in, they get use of it. First party is going to give you credit monitoring or repair for your clients. And the third party's defense costs. So say, for example, one of your clients suffers, their information is compromised. They did get in there and they got their social security number, bank accounts and that, their credit is hurt, and in their process of buying a new house, a new building where they're personally guaranteeing it, and that deal gets bombed, it gets destroyed because of that. You don't think that they're going to turn around and sue you when they find out you're the cause of that? Of course they will. This will pay for the defense and ultimately damages protection too. There's comprehensive breach response solutions, notification on a number of affected individuals who must be notified under applicable law, and they give forensic and legal assistance from a panel of experts. So you do not have to notify your clients, because can you imagine that in a crisis event like that, you or I are going to be we're going to be charged up. We're going to be emotional about it. We'll have the best intentions to write a great letter and what have you, but it will come off as being worried, nervous, hyper, whatever it is, not a calming influence type thing. The insurance companies do this all day, every day. It's why you want this protection. The notified individual to receive, this will be your client if they were affected, to receive an offer for 12 months of free credit monitoring or identity monitoring. I mean, can't beat that. Identity theft related fraud resolution services for individuals who enrolled in credit monitoring will become victims of identity theft. Again, all included in this protection. And then there's coverage for you for website content media liability, protects you again if someone hacks into your site and puts up horrible things and it causes you harm, reputation harm and such. I mean, it's the list. We could go on for hours, which we won't obviously, but of all the things that can happen when it comes into the world of computer fraud and hacking and all that. Hackers and cyber criminals are very opportunistic. It's the new way to, the old put on a ski mask and walk into a five and dime drugstore, whatever, and pull out a gun and rob someone. Those days are getting less and less. This is now the new way that crime is done. Most every state, again, we talked about it, it's all but one, requires your company to notify customers of a breach. And if you don't, again, we talked about you're subject to a $250,000 fine and disciplinary action. And then it's the policy cost versus liability exposure. Let me go back to that. This, by the way, when I put that at the bottom there, a lot of people think, well, gosh, this has to be massively expensive. If I'm a lawyer or any business owner for that matter, I say, oh, I definitely want this. I should have it, but it's got to be tons and tons of money. Well, I'll share this with you. You can buy it, you can get it as an extension on your office business insurance. It comes, this is most insurers, not all, but most, the legitimate, insurers with whom you'd want to be, would be, you have increments of 100,000 with 1,000 deductible, 250,000 with 1,000 deductible, 500,000 with a 5,000 deductible, and $1 million with a $10,000 deductible. For the 100,000, this is just an average cost. You'd be talking a couple $300 a year. 250,000, $300 to $400, 500,000, $500-600 a year, and $1 million, you'd be talking $700, $800, $900 a year. Now that's endorsed off of your office business insurance. I do have an exclusive contract. I'm not here to sell, but there is a company out there that writes a standalone $1 million policy that is the finest contract offered. This is their wheelhouse, with a $1,000 deductible only versus 10, and that premium for the year is $1,100. So for those listening today that have more exposure or want to protect everything properly, that's where you go with that. Hang on while I take a sip of water. Okay. Excuse me. Now, earthquakes, flood, harassment, discrimination, and termination, the grisly gremlins of insurance exclusions. Well, insurance companies, I know this is a shock to everyone listening. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. They are the kings and queens when I talk about underwriters of trying to get the most amount of money from you with the least amount of protection. Things that you may or hope think that are covered really aren't. So here are some of them right here. Excuse me. Harassment, discrimination, and unfair termination lawsuits are swarming in our present society. Only about 5% of lawyers and law firms choose to purchase. The reason that is, most any business can endorse, again, off of their office business insurance, what is known as, the acronym is EPLI, Employment Practices Liability Insurance. It's in the hundreds of dollars a year, again, for $1 million protection. Law firms, though, are not afforded that. The reason that is because you hire other lawyers. And what happens when a lawyer leaves? It's rarely, not always, but it's rarely a situation that is very amicable. People leave, shake hands, give each other a hug. Most of the time, when I say most, 51%, It could be up to 90%, but most of the time it's going to be somewhat contentious, and the leaving lawyer feels they're owed money. This includes failure to make partner, all these different things. And that's why the insurance industry will not offer lawyers this relatively inexpensive addition to your office business insurance. So it has been a standalone policy for forever and a day until recently. And it was incredibly expensive, starting at a minimum premium of no less than $500 and usually $7,500 with a minimum $15,000 deductible. And most small law firms have said, what good is that? I'll just, I'll really manage my firm better. Well, that's changed, and we'll get into that at the end. Sexual harassment, I'll give you an example of many I've seen and read about through the years. A male lawyer takes a liking to a female paralegal. This is not the owner. This is staff. This is someone that, if you own the firm listening today, you hire another lawyer, you want to grow your practice, and that's one of the ways, obviously, you do it. You duplicate your efforts. It was persistent. She gets fed up and quits because she was being harassed. She may have fired her due to cause, what have you, but there isn't, we're not talking that the lawyer is groping her. We're not talking that he's sending her inappropriate pictures or speaking inappropriately. He's just being aggressive, as an example, to just go on a date. Nothing physical, nothing over the top. She ends up filing, she leaves, she feels that's the reason why. The average sexual harassment defense cost, $580,000 in this case we saw. I mean, that was terrible. Workplace harassment. Martin is a managing general partner for a well-known, I changed the names to respect their privacy, all-around decent guy, but he regularly uses off-color language and a touch of a bad temper when things don't go right. Welcome to, everyone's world as a business owner. Occasionally things don't go right, and we don't just laugh it off. We say, what's going on here? One day a secretary took great offense at his language, and he was presented with a lawsuit. Doesn't have to be in front of them. How often do you go to a restaurant? If you just listen closely, there's a lot of profanity used today as a regular part of language. If in an office environment, that needs to be watched very carefully. It can even be through the walls. Some of the most strange things appear from former employees. Here's another one. A firm felt that an African-American couple was being exceptionally demanding of him, and he was unable to please them. Finally, after having enough, this again is this was not an owner of the firm. He turned away and made a derogatory remark. Unacceptable to the nth degree, period. You don't do that. You can say someone's a pain in the neck. You can say they're overbearing, but this is what happens. You thought they couldn't hear him, and they did. They settled at $75,000, $35,000 legal fees, $10,000 employee training, and that, today that becomes as bad as anything. The bad press. Can you control your staff? Who knows what people think and the things they say when they get frustrated? You listening today wouldn't do that, but would your staff do that? You would hope not, but these are examples of things that happen. Gray areas. There's so many gray areas within harassment and discrimination complaints. Law firm culture, humor versus harassment. Perceptions change over time. Excuse me. Culture norms change over time. I mean, these are all, we live in strange times, without going into example, but when you have a young man who's worked his tail off to go right up the food chain to be a sports announcer at ESPN, and they pull him off a game for fear of blowback or him becoming an internet meme, joke or what have you, because of his name that is the same name as a general during the Civil War. I mean, it's a weird time we live in. Is it going to get better or worse? Who's to say? But this is where you get into these gray areas. Employment practices liability, what we talked about, the EPLI, what is it? What are the costs? What does it cover? Okay, let me go back to that. So in effect, all the things we talked about, and I talked about costs. There are now, I have two companies. Again, I'm not here to sell, but this is what I specialize in. There are two companies out there that would right now, for a law firm with a staff of 5, doing revenues of, anywhere between, 100,000 to $1 million, you'd be talking with a $2,500 or a $5,000 deductible, depending. you might be talking $2,000 to $3,000 a year. So is it dirt cheap in the hundreds like it would be for an accounting office or even an insurance office? No, and again, it's relative on size. If you have a huge staff, as I do, it's obviously more than the hundreds. But my point is very simply that it's now affordable enough. So if this is something that resonates with you, there are affordable options, and it's good to know that. And what does it cover? All that we just went over. It's very simple that, for any type, again, of discrimination, it could be, you could be hiring someone and you end up selecting candidate number 2, and there's 7 potential candidates. It could be for your director of welcome, aka the receptionist. And you end up not hiring 6 other candidates, and one of them files a suit because she feels you didn't hire them because she's a female, or she's tall, or she's short, or she's black, or she's white, or she's Catholic, or she's Jewish, or she says, who knows? This all falls under that, and it just keeps the boogeyman, as I like to say, away, the big monster under the bed, if you will. So that's that. All right, moving on to running errands that can ruin you. Another one that, and again, when speaking with lawyers throughout the country at different events, American bar events, coaching, some of the best coaches in the country, how to manage a small law firm, Richard James, and this is one that everyone goes, whoa, really? So let's talk about running errands that can ruin you. Here's an example. Aaron's law firm, again, names and locations to protect the innocent have been changed. But Aaron's law firm is located in the Dallas area. Aaron, the oldest of 4 girls, has marketed her firm as a family-friendly to groups who live in the vicinity. She's known for charitable work and is well-liked and respected. Being a busy, excuse the typo there, a busy firm, you wouldn't want to be a bus firm, the staff often runs out of simple office supply and needs items delivered to the courthouse or another firm. This happens many times. How many times does your office, someone needs to go run to get supplies, or deliver something at the courthouse, or make a bank run, or run to the post office to send out something that needs to be certified, or your monthly newsletter, or whatever? It happens many times. Or picking up lunch for the whole entire staff. This happens many times every week. Law firms, or many small businesses for that matter. Aaron sends her office manager to the courthouse. The setting sun was glaring in his eyes, and Mitchell was driving his own car. Keep that in mind, his own car. You think, where's my liability? You'll see. And keeping to the speed limit, didn't see the car stopping in front of him and had a rear-end collision. The other driver, Craig, had sustained sports injuries to his back and neck years earlier, and this accident exacerbated the existing injuries to the point that Craig would no longer be able to fulfill those coaching duties, therefore sustaining loss of income. This is what happened. Going back, so in that case there, now right here, he's driving his own car. Mitch, your employee, your office manager in this example, driving his own car. His personal auto insurance is primary. But do you know for a fact what are his limits? Is he doing the price gun from Progressive? And no, I don't have a problem with Progressive or Geico. I'm just sharing that what you see enough on TV, where it's all about, they focus on the 5 most important things on auto insurance. And yes, I'm being sarcastic, but they are price, 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 and oh yeah, price. So if you've got staff that buys on, gets what I like to call brainwash, where it's all about price, 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 do you think they will have high limits of liability? I bet you have a lot of staff that has low limits of liability because it's all about price. So let's say Mitch, now an office manager, you would think he would carry decent limits, but let's say he's got 50,000 each person. Right here, you're talking about this happened to a guy who was a pro football coach, a coordinator. Do you think they make 50,000 a year? You might want to take that times 20 and add, and then take that variable and add a 2 or multiply it by 2 or 3. Professional and even college coaches make 7 figures a year, folks. So these are the things that can happen. And once his limits are exhausted, when he's in deposition, when Mitch is in deposition, they're going to ask Mitch, where were you going? He would say, I was going to the courthouse. The courthouse for who? I'm the office manager for, we'll call her Aaron Smith's law firm. And immediately one of your peers, for the personal injury lawyers listening today, You know what you would do, and you'd be correct to do. You would name Aaron's firm in this suit, and there is protection for that. It's the technical term is called hired non-owned auto insurance, and I just like to call it driving liability. This could protect you and your staff on any type of errands. General liability is only for your premises. What coverage did Aaron need to carry? Hired and non-owned auto coverage. I just shared that. Here's the real, I know this is a backbreaker financially. You've picked on my humor by now. It costs a little over $100 a year for $1 million worth of protection. I mean, it's a no-brainer. And again, so many of my peer group says, "Whoa, it's a law firm. Oh, they don't have any driving exposure. Let's just save them $100 a year." What small business doesn't have someone running errands, if not the owner, him or herself? So, I mean, it's ludicrous to not just endorse this right there. Without this protection, she would have a lien against her property and would be sued for all of her firm's profits. I mean, no reason not to have it. Here's the example. The office manager's personal auto insurance was for $300. Where would the rest of the over $1 million come from? Talked about this. A good, competent personal injury attorney quickly discovered he was running an errand for Aaron's legal firm on business time. Aaron was certain she had coverage for this. After all, she carried a general liability protection. Nope, she didn't have coverage for it. And now, these aren't my clients. These are stories I've read and what have you. So that's an easy one to get fixed there. Now let's get into the professional liability. Claims made versus occurrence form. So there's an understanding there. This is very confusing in the insurance industry, as I shared. I don't think they hate to have you confused, if you want to know the truth. Too many excellent law firms have had allegations of malpractice made against them. The policy form language is critically important. Not all lawyers' professional liability insurance policies are created equally. They aren't all the same. This isn't a commodity. This isn't to be bought at the lowest price. I'm like you. I own a business. I want to get a great deal. Absolutely all day, every day. Love when that happens and this and that. But I don't pick my lawyer charges $395 an hour in Toledo, Ohio. That's pretty high from what I think I know, but he's worth every penny of it. My accounting firm, again, we don't get cheap accounting services, but I don't have to worry about audits. I don't have to worry getting notices from the IRS or the different states in Arizona and Ohio. Everything is done properly. I would hope you run your law firm the same way. So for insurance policies, there's night and day differences. And if you're not working with an expert, you know, you're walking into a casino with $100, sitting down at a $50 blackjack table. You lose two hands, goodbye. You might as well throw your money in the air. You might be more fun to watch. Endorsements provided tailored coverage, again, typo, my apologies, that meets the need of an individual law firm. These endorsements are called optional endorsements attached to the main policy form. Changes the coverage offered underneath the main policy form by your insurer. Some optional endorsements expand coverage while others take coverage away. Almost all insurance companies include a policy deductible. The average on professional liability is $2,500. That's common. Some are as low as $1,000. Depending on the size firm you are, what have you, you can get $5,000, $10,000, you know, and above. But the average tends to be $2,500. Deductibles and immediate impact on your firm's finances in the event of a claim. We'll talk about that. Hold that thought. And there are optional endorsements that are available that lessen the negative impact of a deductible on your law firm. So we're talking about it right here. Most insurers offer aggregate deductibles. Most policies are written with a per claim deductible. The value of an aggregate deductible is you avoid paying a large number of deductibles within the same policy year. Now let's go back to this. If you, as many of you, I would hope know, but may not know, that you, your top policies, if you work with a broker who has an exclusive contract with different insurers, again, like I do, not a sales pitch, just as a matter of fact, because I specialize with you, lawyers, law firms, you should have built into that policy or even endorsed for in the hundreds of dollars a year. The acronym is FDD, which is First Dollar Defense. which means the only time you pay your deductible is if you are indeed negligent in a claim. So if you get a meritless lawsuit or a threat of a lawsuit, if you read the small print, you need to notify your insurer immediately. Excuse me. If you do not, they could, if, for example, if you say, well, I don't want to notify, I mean, this guy's threatening to sue me, but we did our job, and this former client or current client is a jerk. He or she is trying to welch out of paying me. I've seen this before. I'm not dumb. I see what's going on here. If they threaten any type of suit that they say you're negligent or you didn't do your job, you should notify the insurance company immediately, because ultimately, if it does get to that level and you need to file a claim, they're going to ask when you were made aware of this. If you say, well, originally they reached out, back in January, and here we are in August, your insurance company, excuse me as I get over a little bronchitis here, your insurance company could then do what is known as a reservation of rights and or deny the claim, because they, as a part of all professional liability policies, they want to get ahead of it, and they feel that when it gets to the filing point, they're already fighting a losing battle. You're in a very defensive position, reactive versus proactive. So keep that in mind. But the beauty of it is the reason a lot of lawyers and law firms don't, even notify the insurer is they look at it as, hey, I'm going to be out my $2,500 or $5,000 deductible for some garbage lawsuit where we did nothing wrong. This client of ours is a welch. They're not trying to pay their bills. Now they're trying to turn it on us, or they're insatiable, or they're cuckoo, or all the different things, because I doubt anyone on this call runs a poor law firm. Now, do mistakes happen, and can staff make a mistake where you're just like, we dropped the ball, we blew it? Yes, and everyone understands that, and that's why you have professional liability, okay? But in a lot of cases, much more the rule than the exception, it's some meritless lawsuit to usually get out of paying a bill, and that's that. So you can't get an endorsement that you don't have to worry about. The only time you will pay your deductible is if you indeed are at fault, hence known as first dollar defense. Aggregate deductibles, if you don't have an aggregate deductible at 2 times your deductible, you're subject to, if you're a collections firm, or you do some small, class action suits or something like that, or you're representing an entire family, in an estate case and what have you. If you had 4 people in a family file suit against you because they're all fighting for mom and dad's inheritance and what have you, or mom's, passed earlier and then pop ultimately goes and meets his maker. In this case here, you would have 4 if you had a $2,500 deductible or a $5,000 deductible. The insurance company would take all 4. They would file it, individually, because they all have to file as collectively as their own, entities. The 4 kids, you'd be out $20,000 if you didn't, and back up to even build on that with your first dollar defense. If you don't have that, when the insurance company defends, when it's all done, even if they make it go away and you've done everything right, you will pay the first $5,000 times 4 people if your deductible is $5,000 or $2,500 on 4 people. If that adds up quickly, so you want to get an endorsement that is 2 times your deductible, and that usually companies will do that at most for in the hundreds and sometimes for free. Loss only deductible, first dollar defense. Excuse me, we talked about that. A law firm's deductible only applies if you are found to be negligent and a claim is made by your insurer on behalf of your firm. The deductible does not apply to defense costs. So if it is a meritless suit, the insurance company will take care of, make it go away, tell them to go away. There is no settlement. They'll say, no, our client did everything. That's you, obviously, did everything right. Goodbye, see ya, no claim there, and you're not out a penny. Claims expenses outside policy limits. That is a big deal. CEOL, claims expenses outside limits, versus CEIL, claims expenses inside limits. Again, so common. so blatant, so glaring, in his written bar associations, my cousin Jimmy, my buddy from church or the golf league or whoever, good friend. If they don't specialize with lawyers, you're going to see the claims expense and side limits. There is and I'll explain what that is. Claims expense outside, which is what you want. And again, the best insurance policies include this, and others, it isn't tremendous. Again, in the hundreds of dollars a year, folks, there's a separate limit for defense costs and other claims expenses equal to the per claim limit of liability, subject to a maximum of $1 million. So for example, if you only carry $250,000 each occurrence and a $500,000 aggregate, if you've got CEIL, which is always how it is written in its basic form, and you have, again, a meritless lawsuit, or it goes on and on, $250,000 can be burned like it's no one's business. I mean, it can go so quickly. Again, I've heard horror story after horror story how that does it. But even if they only used, if you had the CEIL, okay, and they used 100,000 of your 250, and then a claim is, and you settle at $250,000, guess what? You don't have to be a math genius to say 250 minus 100. If you incurred, in this example I just gave there, if you incurred 100,000 in defense costs, and you've got CEIL, which is how it's normally going to be written, and an expert is going to immediately know, excuse me, to make it CEOL, you're going to be 250 minus 100. You've only got 150 left. Who do you think's paying that other 100? You are. $100,000. If you've got that kind of money on this call, I applaud you. But even if you do you want to just give it for that? Because, well, I saved a few $100s. No, you would have every reason to file an errors and omissions suit against your insurance broker if you're working with a broker. If it's your bar association, what do you do then? So this, again, key point. You want to get claims expense outside limits. It's worth every penny of it. Therefore, you never, your liability limits is not eroded with defense costs. So that's important. Other things that you want endorsed as a part of your policy, you want the retirement or death of a partner, the liability goes on infinitely, or when you buy or merge with a new firm, excuse me, you want your protection to go on where, because your firm has been wound down or merged, if anything comes up on the prior firm, you want to have a contract that is going to protect you. So therefore, while you're in retirement or death to the estate, to the remaining family, or when you merge with a new firm, you personally don't get dragged into, or your former company, you have to answer that and what have you. So big endorsements you want there. Could this happen to you? I give another example, basic example on looking at the totality of your law firm. Let's face it, your law firm is probably your greatest asset, but did you know it can be also a deadly liability? Not just vandalism and theft. A lot goes wrong around a law firm, as the nature of the business, of any business for that matter. A fire starts in the business next door and your firm suffers smoke damage. And your sprinklers went off too. Who's responsible? Are you covered? What if the fire puts you out of business for a month? Who pays for your employees? Who pays your fixed bills? How many times do I see small lawyers that say, I don't need office business insurance? By the way, it's nationally normally a minimum premium of $550. You put the data breach on there at $100,000, $650, and that's that. So you're talking here, folks, $500 to $700 a year type thing, but I don't need it. I take my laptop home. My furniture is kind of crappy. But what about these things? How does that, or who's going to pay your employees if you have to move down the street? You think your landlord, if there's a fire, is going to say you don't have to pay rent? No, of course he or she is. You'll need another place to work for a month, up to 6 months, however long it takes to do that. Do you want to lay your employees off for a week or 2 weeks while you reorganize? Do you think that's going to be good? Do you think they'll like that? Most of our employees tend to live paycheck to paycheck, and they count on our employing them. So these are things that, let me go back, that go into really the whole makeup of what can happen. There's workers' comp. That's, pretty much what you see is what you get. Although a lot of lawyers are like, oh yeah, I should get workers' comp. One subject on workers' comp, and I didn't include that in the slides, is very simply, you as the managing partner partners can be protected under workers' comp, which acts as a form of, if you're injured in a work capacity, heaven forbid, you fall down the stairs, you get in a car accident on business, there's a workers' comp claim. It acts as disability, if you will. Most owners, exclude themselves, but it is not against the law or against the rules to protect yourself. And if you see that exposure, again, too many of my peer group just immediately assume that the owner of a business does not want to be covered under workers' comp. You can be, for that matter. So that's that. Again, if you want to get a free copy of my book, you can either email me, that's yours truly's email address, call the office, you can do that, or you can at this point go online, just fill out a form, and you'll get a mailed copy of the book sent right to you with all my contact information and what have you. And that's that. So I appreciate you working with me, just getting over bronchitis as I sound like I'm choking or underwater at times. But I guess, James, I would think if there's any questions or points to go over, if anyone wants to chime in, or James, I'll turn it back over to you as you can wind this down.
Thank you, Michael. One quick question. So how often do you recommend attorneys kind of review their insurance coverage and consult their insurance provider just to make sure that their business growth is meeting their insurance needs as well, or vice versa?
Superb question. I'm glad you brought that up, James. Shame on me. Your professional liability, along what James is asking, that is something that can only be moved at your expiration. Unlike your office business insurance or workers' comp, you lose your prior acts date. So if you open up your firm, James, if you were a lawyer, for example, and you opened up your firm January 1 of 2012, your prior acts date, assuming you purchased protection, professional liability protection from day one, if you were so inspired by me today as an attendee, you said, I want to do business with this guy, and what have you, you would have to wait until your 1/1 expiration to move that. So, and the answer is, as far as the others, the office business insurance, we talked about the data breach, the employment practices, all those things, those can be moved midterm, but certainly every year at your expiration and or renewal, you would want to have your current broker should be reviewing this and renewing it and doing a detailed synopsis of what goes on out there. And that's it. You should not just trust that Broker Joe or Broker Jane does that. Ask them, put them to task and say, to whom have you approached as my expiration comes out there? And if they haven't approached anyone, well, you're with ABC Insurance Company or XYZ Insurance Company, or Hartford or CNA or Hanover, whoever, to name, common known great insurance companies, if you will, to say that I've been with Hanover for, 4 years and we really want to build great, retention with them. That's not a terrible thought, but in the professional liability with that retroactive date being able to be carried forward with the new insurer, it does not, it is not a bad thing to move professional liability from year to year. Unlike, it kind of makes sense on, again, I use something that's very common and easy. Not that this is rocket science, we're not talking brain surgery here, but in the world of insurance, home and auto insurance is as basic as it gets. And that's something that you might want to say, hey, I want to build many years with Nationwide or Travelers or whoever, or CNA, and build a good thing. That kind of makes sense as your kids start driving and accidents tend to occur. And hey, we've been with you for 18 years. Yeah, Junior got into an accident, but what about the last 18 years? That can work for you. Professional liability doesn't necessarily work so much that way. So to answer your question, James, your broker should be looking at it once a year, and just a simple inquiry to them to say, to whom are you shopping my account this year, would really hold them to task. And if they don't, do it, or if it's your bar association, they only have one company with whom they work. That's a kind of a sweetheart deal, if you will. So does that answer your question, James, I hope?
Yes, it did, Michael. Thank you so much for answering that question. If anyone has any further questions, feel free to send an email to michael@insuringlawyer.com, and I'm sure Michael will get back to you very promptly. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at our next free webinar. Have a great day.